Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Today's 19th of May. So welcome to our Territory Tourism Update live Q&A. We've got today a terrific guest who's given an hour of her time to join us this morning, and Philippa Harrison, the Managing Director of Tourism Australia. We have, of course, our regular speakers joining us this morning, Michael Bridge, Chair of Tourism NT, and Andrew Hopper, CEO of Department of Tourism, Sport and Culture. We do have apologies from the Minister, Honourable Lauren Moss. Minister, as I understand it, is busy in cabinet meetings today fighting for the budget for tourism, and we all wish her good outcomes for our industry in that. We also have, representing our industry on the panel today, we have the Chair of Tourism Top End, Michael Scott. Good morning, Chair. We have from Alice Springs, Central Australia, Tourism Central Australia, Patrick Bedford, Chair of TCA. Good morning, Patrick. Morning. And we have the CEO of Hospitality NT, Alex Bruce, today's front page man in the NT News. I'd also like to acknowledge all the members from Litchfield Tourism, Katherine Tourism Group, East Arnhem Land Tourism Association, and Darwin City Waterfront Retailers Association. So great. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, of which I reckon there's probably a few that have been with us now for the many weeks we've been doing this weekly live Q&A. Thanks for joining us. I think what's important here, and as we have discovered, we have had a couple of rogue infiltrators as we talk in some detail and share concepts about what's happening in tourism in the Territory. So we have, and we will again today, operate this meeting under a Chatham House rule. So this meeting's held under a Chatham House rule wherein participants are free to use the information received, but neither the identity nor the affiliation of the speakers nor that of any participant may be revealed. So for anyone who is from the media, we're grateful that you're showing interest in tourism. Thank you very much for your support, continued support, but we'd also ask that you'd respect our ability to use this forum to share with each other. I will just do a couple of quick updates, which I'd like to do. We are in the process, both Tourism and Tourism Central Australia, and I think Tourism NT as well, in contacting tourism operators as to, at this point now, who has an open date, if not recommenced, and bookable product. Is it available through your booking channels? What booking channels? And of course, the target market for the immediate future is Darwin, Katherine, Alice Springs, so the major residential areas of the Territory until further notice. And so for a lot of our members, I know that there's been a lot of conversation about how do I package this, how do I think about this, what do I do? Your target market is the persona of a Territorian, so it's about getting them to get out to explore their backyard, take the time to be a true Territorian, and get up on that wish list that they have probably had for a long time, of places where they've been either too busy or haven't got around to it. So where's that opportunity? And I think that's the approach, and we'll certainly be looking to hear for some more information around that shortly in terms of supporting marketing campaigns. A reminder to all businesses, whether you have recommenced or you didn't close during this period, that one key requirement of business that we're certainly advocating to everybody is to upload your COVID checklist onto the NTG website. And then you will get your certificate, and I understand the labels are on their way. There are a range of other programs to help businesses who are also looking to improve their policies and procedures to protect their staff, their customers, and of course their brand, just to do the best they can to mitigate any future risk. And it's a real challenge for us, for everyone here in the Territory, because we've been so many weeks now at zero that that concept of one or two becoming more is really quite a challenging thought for everybody that I talk to every day on the phone, and how we go through that. I would like to also just take a quick moment to say congratulations to Katherine. Katherine had got onto, clearly someone watches Breakfast Radio, and I'd ask her to join here by Annabelle Curtin. Annabelle, for those of you who don't know, is co-owner, the real boss of Katherine Outback Experience, and Annabelle's also the elected representative on the TTE Board of Management. Last week, the 7 Sunrise Breakfast Show in their breakfast crosses was going around, and what we might just do quickly, Stephen, is just show everyone on board what happened last week, which was a terrific little great opportunity at PR. Now, if you are using a phone or a laptop, my advice here is that you can swipe sideways, left or right, in order to see a quick snapshot as to what, and hear a quick snapshot as to what the guys in Katherine got up to last week.
And we're heading to the Northern Territory this morning. K's for Katherine.
It is. Good morning, Sam. Our first visit to the NT in this virtual tour. Bring it on, guys. We will showcase anywhere in Australia. It's all about staying connected. And look at the smiling faces. Good morning. Hello, everyone. And Katherine, thanks for joining us.
Morning.
Great to see you all. Bromwood is there on the Manbullo estate, which looks absolutely beautiful as well. And we've got Manuel, who's now going to play us a little bit on the Didge. This is exciting because you are from Top Didge Tours, where people can see the art, they can learn about the land, they can hear the music. Whenever you're ready, my friend, let's hear a little taste of the action. Love that. You've got to go do one of these tours, guys. They will be doing them later in the year. Thank you, my friend. That will be an amazing experience. That is so cool. Let's keep moving around the grounds. That sound just takes you there, doesn't it? The beautiful outback, the great history. We now have Tom Curtin, multiple golden guitar winner, no less. Good morning, mate. Great to see you. Thank you for joining us with the youngster there as well, Harry and Annabelle. But let's get a little taste of a song about the Northern Territory, and we're all going to groove along. Over to you, Tom.
So turn around, slow it down, running up here tonight. Getting out back, gotta relax, running up here tonight. Freak, steal up to the entity, see the world behind. See the mind, running up here tonight.
Big round of applause. Woo. Territory Time is the song. And the local legend doing great things. Love that, my friend. Thank you for sharing it with us. We're going to have more with our friends from Katherine soon, but here's your weather.
Annabelle, I think you're inspired. You were the person who picked up what that Kay was coming up on the Sunrise Breakfast list, and then it was a process of motivating the community. What I want to do is really take the moment to share, because I think this is a great example of tourism operators pulling together, of a community coming together, not relying upon a government agency to step in and do the heavy lifting on marketing, seizing that moment. How did it come around, Annabelle?
Thanks, Glenn. Actually, one of our guests who'd been to our show in Christabrook in South Australia contacted us and said that Kay was coming up. So he's like, get amongst it. So we jumped on there, emailed them. And from there, they sort of emailed a whole heap of businesses, and we just jumped on the front of it and pulled together a bunch of businesses. We had Annika from the Visitor Centre helping as well, and we made sure we got in there really quickly and put forward a whole bunch of characters, businesses, tourism businesses, obviously. Tried to get a nice balance so it didn't look too tourism heavy or too hospitality heavy, but I think we did a pretty good job getting good balance in there, and there was a lot of laughs, a lot of jokes for anyone who did get to watch it. Very Territory.
Annabelle, what I loved about it was it really was picking up on that Territory sense of humour in there. And at one count, I was looking at going back to it, there was about 45, 50 heads that you guys had got out of bed, remembering that this is a live from, it's still dark in Katherine when that was going live in Sydney. So really well done, and congratulations. It was great to see Faye Miller on there as well, albeit she should have been busy getting a wedding on Saturday organised. But instead she was joining the whole of Katherine in that live cross, seizing the moment. And whilst there's no bookings immediate to come out of that, certainly presenting why people should be visiting the Territory and absolutely spending time in Katherine. So well done.
No, thank you. It was a bit of fun to be involved in it.
Yeah, great. We look forward to seeing the next one. Thanks. And thanks for those. It's our first little foray into doing some multimedia there. So, and I think there's just a great it was a great little story to share for me, and to find that and to see that. But what I've got out of with dealing and close to our members, as close as we can be online with our members in Katherine, is that they're certainly not given up. And with Nitmiluk also closed under biosecurity, how Katherine's banding together to stand up as a destination in its own right, and not in the shadows of Nitmiluk, and a lot of product and packaging and considerations about how they distribute moving forward. So terrific. Okay, moving forward, I think following on from our themes, and we'll be with our guest speaker very shortly, Michael Bridge. There's a few things that are happening here in the Territory that we've been talking about on a weekly basis. One of those was that you're leading what was the Chief Minister, you put to the Chief Minister, and I think he'd supported, was the Tourism Task Force. I understand that that's far from being completed and having those outcomes, but how's the progress going for that, and is there anything that you are able to share with us at this point?
Yeah, thank you, Glenn. Well, it's not far from being completed, in fact, and the Chief Minister did want feedback by the end of this week. We'll be ready to go by the end of this week, and we'll present that to him early next week. Just recapping from last Tuesday, where I briefed everyone, Hops and I met with the Chief Health Officer last Tuesday afternoon, and the Deputy and the Head of Exemptions and the previous Acting Deputy. We just about had everyone in the room, which was fantastic. We got a good insight into some of those challenges around both the biosecurity zones, but also our broader borders opening. We had a full task force meeting on the Wednesday. We had a Tourism Board meeting Thursday morning. I managed to brief the Chief Minister Thursday afternoon, as well as be presented their overall rebound plans. This afternoon we have another task force meeting where we've got Andrew David from Qantas joining us. Unfortunately, he couldn't join us last week's meeting. We've got the Chief Health Officer addressing the entire task force this afternoon. Thursday this week, we've got a joint RTO briefing with the Tourism Board to really have a chat to them about where we're at broadly as a Tourism Board, but more specifically as the Tourism Task Force. Friday, that document goes to the Tourism Board for their endorsement or otherwise. It will go to the Chief whether the Board endorses it or not. However, we are giving them the right to contribute if they feel they need to, and the expectation is that document will be given to the Chief early next week. But look, I don't think there's anything that's, I've mentioned some of the key issues previously here, and some of the challenges. Borders, I think everyone's quietly confident that we'll see the biosecurity zones lifted come early June, if not certainly by mid-June on the 18th. That seems to be the way we're tracking, and hopefully all will continue in that regard. The broader borders are a large challenge, and particularly some of the porous borders between other states and territories around the countryside that don't have as low a COVID-19 issue as what we're lucky enough in the Territory to have. And so that's creating some indirect problems. What we don't want to do is have a situation like we saw early on in this COVID challenge, where we had Chinese visitors arriving via New Zealand and accessing Australia that way. And there is some concern that that could happen in a territory sense. We've really made the point, and I think everybody is acutely conscious we need to get business open sooner rather than later. We're now facing that challenge, whether, you know, we've made it quite clear that we need 2 to 3 months in the domestic marketing to really have a good chance of getting bums on seats here into the NT. And we're desperately hoping we get that, and we've got to balance that against potentially an earlier opening. What we don't want to do is force industry into thinking they need to open early. We appreciate that people have been hopelessly unprofitable and unsustainable in the last couple of months and adding one extra month at the end and more or less encouraging people to open early with less than sustainable visitation might not be the right thing in the long term. We understand and appreciate everyone wants to get open sooner rather than later. My gut feel, and please don't take this as gospel, is borders will open on 1 September. However, there is a strong chance that that might happen earlier. We'll be certainly from the marketing side of the business, we're full steam ahead trying to have a look what that work looks like from a domestic perspective, and we're hopeful that we can really go to market in mid-June. I'm confident that we'll have a much better idea mid-June, and that's certainly around about the time frame that the Chief Minister has been indicating that he expects to be able to let us know on the broader audit issue.
That would effectively be like a 3-month lead time?
It'll probably be about 2.5, one would expect. Okay. Oh, sorry, if it comes early at 1 August, it'll be 2.5. If not, it'll be a 3.5 lead time. Now, this is subject to a lot of things. I mean, needless to say, aviation capacity is critical to all of the territory, but let alone specific destinations such as Central Australia, Uluru, and the like. So this has to be done in consultation with the likes of Qantas and Virgin. Probably the last point that's coming out very clear is that there should be an overweighting of domestic marketing spend in the next 12 to 18 months. We don't believe we'll completely withdraw from the international market, but given the challenges that we're going to have with international aviation, that's not at the forefront of our thinking. I've just mentioned Hopper. One figure that came across my desk this morning is there's currently 13,000 heavy jets parked around the world, non-operational at the moment. The expectation from the leasing industry is that less than 5,000 of those will actually be returned to the air. So there's still a hell of a lot of aeroplanes flying, so it's not as catastrophic as that might otherwise sound, but a great proportion of those aeroplanes that are parked probably won't return to the air, and they're predominantly in the international market. So we've got some challenges there in the near term. Other than that, I think I've talked through each of the other issues that I can, and happy to take some questions as per normal towards the end.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Andrew Hopper, what is? We've heard 5 June, 18 June was the date that's out there. What are our markers? What are we waiting on to hear to get confirmation of biozones opening earlier? Is there? Can I ask what is it that we're waiting for the Chief Minister to make that call?
Thanks, Glenn, and morning, everyone. I think the main thing we're waiting for at the moment around 5 June or 18 June, obviously it's the Northern Territory Government is in consultation or conversation with land councils, but particularly the federal government. Ultimately, it's a Commonwealth piece of legislation, so it's the Commonwealth that need to answer that question. I doubt very much that they wouldn't be supportive, but the ultimate decision maker is the Commonwealth, and I understand they're working through that now. So, I think the Chief's made it pretty clear his desires, and ultimately he leads the conversation around, from a territory perspective, around borders and what changes with working with the Chief Health Officer. So right now we've just got to sit tight and let that process play through. But I know everyone's quite keen to see that resolved as soon as possible, so we all know what's ahead of us.
We're moving on that. Okay, Patrick, can I throw to you? We've just heard 1st of September. And so we're waiting to hear, and I understand it's the Federal Health Minister who ultimately makes a call around biozones, isn't it? But with the Chief's input, I guess. Do you have any questions for Andrew and for Mike around Tourism NT, or any comments you'd like to add on behalf of members in Central Australia?
Yeah, look, it's going to be an interesting one from the point of view we've just missed, obviously, the biggest part of our tourism season. So coming into September, October, obviously, we're coming into our quieter time of the year. So it's going to be very interesting if a lot of the tour operators and businesses will reopen for this because we're not going to make much money if there's no internationals coming for the later part of the year. So it's going to be a tough road ahead for tourism, and I think that's going to be a big kind of question mark over everyone's head. Is it worth opening up? So when tourists do come here, what will be available to them? You know, that's going to be a big question.
Yeah. So, Mike Bridge.
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. And it remiss of me not to actually mention that, but one of the themes that are coming out, and I've heard this in Queensland, and maybe even Philippa might be able to touch on this when we hear from her, but there seems to be a lot of pressure gaining about the potential continuation of JobKeeper for certain sectors of the industry, and that's something certainly that the task force is going to highlight and try and push through. There is a deep appreciation that right across the Northern Territory and certain parts of Queensland and Western Australia that the vast majority of the busy season has been lost, and that businesses will require continued support even whilst the rest of Australia tends to recover. So that's acknowledged, and that is something we're putting up.
Yeah, I think if the JobKeeper was sustained for a couple of months, it might allow business to open knowing that their bills are paid to a certain extent for their staff. That would be probably really great.
Yeah, because certainly a challenging environment, isn't it, to be opening, Mike Scott, to be opening if it is September, only to be then going straight into our traditional wet season. Fire up the businesses only to slow them down again.
Yeah, it's uncharted territory, that's for sure. You know, in the many, many years that I've been around, you can't see so many negative parameters and hurdles to get over. And although, people are saying that, things are going to the wall, I think there's still a bit ahead. We're going to need some really good luck in order to get through a lot of this. A lot of people are.
Alex Bruce, talk about openings. Australia saw Territorians rejoicing that they could have a cold beer and a feed as of midday last Friday, and you and I had a conversation yesterday that there was perception for many people who certainly weren't local that life was good again. What's the feedback from the hospitality sector for their first week in opening? Because there's a fair bit of effort in opening up.
Good morning, everyone. So picking up on some of the comments that have already been said this morning about opening up into unviable positions, that is absolutely the case for a range of our industry, and it's already showing clear in the data. So everyone really enjoyed Friday, but by Saturday there was, trade of 10%, 20%, 25% in venues, restaurants and pubs across the city. They're really missing that tourist content in their spend. A lot of our venues, especially in regional areas, chose not to participate or are delaying until the next stage their choices. And interestingly, that wasn't just the traditional pubs; it was also some of the restaurants around Darwin chose not to play at this point either. There was a lot of focus on hospitality. We're aware of that, but we're acutely mindful that all is not roses. This was about getting the momentum built to move through this stage to the next stage to the next stage as quick as we possibly can, with the end state being those borders. I mean, it's been made abundantly clear that they're going to be the last thing. So therefore, I'm trying to knock over every 10 pin I can between them and the borders as quickly as we can. There is no coronavirus in the Northern Territory. There's never been any community transfer of coronavirus in the Northern Territory. All that we are now being told to do as a society is practice new social norms in preparedness for when the borders do open, there will be a case or two. And by that stage, have health where it needs to be and have the targeted tracing to go in there, shut down a place, quarantine it, clean it, reopen it again, minimise the damage to our society. I feel like that is our inevitable path now, and why we're not getting there sooner is a real question within our industry.
I think I would offer to that some of our, I feel there is some questions in our industry, but I think also that there is, as you and I have shared offline, there's also challenges amongst our industry as to how they manage their businesses into an unknown, looking after staff and and of course customers, but also to the bigger piece, which I think was at the very forefront of why tourism closed down at the start of this year. And Philip, you're joining us, and you're sitting in on this very sort of territory conversation. But a large swathe of the tourism industry closed as soon as it got the advice from the CMO that a quarter of our population were at the utmost risk for what was ahead of us. And so with that spirit of goodwill and care to protect 60,000 years of living culture, many of our tourism operators closed, and there is a big concern that they don't want that to be all for nothing and worry about the path ahead, worry about having the guidelines, the framework in place to be able to open responsibly and at low risk to Territorians. I would, Patrick, is there anything further you'd like to bring up? Anything that you feel from a Central Australia before we helicopter up to a national perspective?
Look, it is that near far, you know, we want to be safe in the territory, in Central Australian territory and whole. So we don't want to rush in too early and all of a sudden Corona pops its head up and then all of a sudden everyone's back to quarantine. So that's a very prevalent point to make, is we need to be very careful about when we rush this through. We need to be very calculated, and it's obviously the detriment of business at the moment that, you know, if we open too early, Corona comes in, business is back to in quarantine, and there's nothing happening for the next 6 to 12 months. So I think the later we delay it, it's not great, but it'll prevent cases coming in while the rest of Australia is adjusting down to zero COVID cases. It's as simple as that. So it's a very fine line that we need to kind of tread, and we can't rush back in to open up just because we want business back, because it's going to be a longer road back if COVID comes into the territory.
Michael Bridge, we've seen other premiers that debate around borders opening or closing. We heard Minister for Tourism, Simon Birmingham, this morning come out and say tourism needs to think about their borders. What are your thoughts about this conversation?
Yeah, look, absolutely. And without, you know, I'm no health official, but the advice that we're getting and what we're seeing nationally, the Territory has an adequate health system for the Northern Territory. In fact, per capita, we probably have one of the best health systems in Australia. But it's been made quite clear that if we have a Newmark nursing home like happened in Western Sydney, or a Victorian Meatworks or a Launceston Hospital outbreak, it fills our health system. So one, that would immediately mean we're back down into lockdown, which would be beyond catastrophic. But probably more longer term, we lose the opportunity to indirectly market ourselves as being the safe, free, open destination to what we are. No one's going to leave New South Wales and Victoria and get in their camper van and come north if our health system is struggling, and it could struggle for months, if not years, post an outbreak like that. So again, I'm not trying to be alarmist, but you know, that you've got to realise that, you know, we have a fraction of New South Wales ICU capacity, and therefore they can maintain these outbreaks. The Northern Territory just can't in the current environment. So it's not just our vulnerable population; it's our vulnerable health system. And I don't mean that at a shot at health. It's very adequate for what would be normal times. So that's going into people's thinking that are making these decisions, which to most of us just seem a bit outlandish, but there is brains behind it.
Okay. What we might do is, and I think this is certainly the conversation that everyone's having, is the framework that goes in place for the inevitable opening of borders and when that will be, in timelines. And I know that across the territory we all have very different views, and we also have a very different perspective for our lived experience of so many weeks now at zero to that of our southern counterparts. What we'll do now is we'll move to a national focus. And before I ask Philippa to say some things, we might just take an opportunity for those of you. I know so many of our members have been watching very closely the great work that Tourism Australia has been doing, and also are across the current campaign, which is focused towards a domestic audience, but also giving voice into international. So I might just ask Stephen to play the current, may I say, video from Tourism Australia around positioning of Australia.
A funny thing happened the other day when we peeked through our doors. Somehow, our backyard had grown more radiant than before. Rubbed my eyes, couldn't believe what I saw. Your ancient beauty felt new to me. Australia, my home. This place that means more. From indoors, I saw the great outdoors having a rest, the roos prepping for the return of their guests. As we wonder and wander, hungry to explore. Under twinkling stars, with no shoes, we raise a glass to what you are. Australia. Never knew I could be homesick for a place I never left. As you spring to life again, we're reunited with each and every step.
And with that, we invite Pip Harrison, Managing Director of Tourism Australia, to a virtual meeting here in the Northern Territory. Welcome to the Territory, Pip. It looks like you're already there.
Thank you. It's very lovely to be here. I thought I'd jump into a Territory, one of our Tourism Australia's Zoom backgrounds that features the Territory to get in the spirit. Thank you for having me. And I think before I kick off, I just wanted to acknowledge the just terrible time that that everybody is having at the moment. You know, the worst thing that we should have happening right now is that you've still got a hangover from ATE. But actually, what is happening is that, you know, we're in a position where everybody is either hibernated or dealing with really low tourism numbers. And, you know, as I've just heard over the last half an hour, there are some just really complex issues going on across the nation at the moment in terms of you know, competing priorities of health and business and you know, timing and everything, and there's just so much uncertainty and frustration out there. And so I just wanted to acknowledge all of that. I have actually you know, my husband is a small business owner and he has been through some really tough times. So I feel your pain. I have firsthand experience of it, and I just wanted to acknowledge that and just let you know that my team and I are really motivated to work through this and create the demand for tourism experiences in Australia, be that domestically at the moment, but also internationally long term. And it really does get us out of bed and has given us a new drive at the moment. And I think, you know, while times are tough at the moment, Australia and particularly the Northern Territory is in a great spot in the long term, because, you know, what people are looking at now is they're looking for wide open spaces. They are looking for uniqueness. We are always looking for uniqueness from a TA point of view to stand out in what we call the sea of sameness in destination marketing. You know, everyone has a great beach. You know, everyone has some great wildlife, but we have some real uniqueness, and the Territory really embodies a lot of that. So I think Australia and the Territory are long term in a really good spot. And I think, you know, the other thing that really does make us unique is the fact that, you know, we do have the oldest living culture in the world. And I think I've been in this role for 6 months now, and one of my ambitions for the, you know, however long I'm here in this role is to really make sure we dial up those stories. I just don't know that we tell them enough. And so I am really personally focused on how we dial up the role of telling our First Nation stories as part of our tourism offering. So, you know, watch this space as we work through all of that at a national level. And, you know, no one has better stories than the Northern Territory. So I think, again, you're in a great spot for that. So what is TA doing at the moment? Well, internationally, as you know, our borders are closed. It doesn't look like they're going to open anytime soon. The indications are sometime in 2021, and that is what the teams we've got offshore are planning for. We don't plan to change our footprint at all. we have to be really nimble and make sure that we're not investing in areas that are just never going to come back. But actually, we're in 15 markets around the world. We think that those are the right 15 markets. We always have a look at those. We might dial up and dial down some activity in those markets based on the outlook for visitation, but we are never going to go dark in those markets. It's certainly, the board's direction, the minister's direction, that we keep Australia top of mind throughout all of this. So some of the things that we're doing internationally is we are doing a lot of training. We have found that the Aussie Specialist Program is something that people are really tapping into. Frontline consultants are really keen to keep up their training, do a lot of, in their downtime, they want to connect. And so we've had record trainings over this period. And Tourism NT are a big partner of ours in this program. And so we've been doing some really good work in terms of training up frontline consultants. So they're really up to speed when the borders open again. The other area that we found that's really busy internationally is PR. So we are feeding lots and lots of stories out internationally, and because journalists can't go anywhere, they're picking them up, and we're getting some really great coverage. They love a good animal story, so if you've got animal stories, please feed them through to us, or any story. They are personal stories. We had a koala that was re-released into the wild from Port Macquarie Hospital after the bushfires, and that got picked up globally and had just incredible coverage. So there is a real appetite out there for good news stories. So the team, the international teams, PR teams are really working hard on that. And we're just feeding out lots of content. So like this weekend, I'll talk about Live from Oz in just a minute, but feeding out lots of content through our social channels is being really well engaged with and really well consumed. So it's really important that we keep Australia top of mind. It's not right to do any partnership or conversion work right at the moment. Although, as soon as we have an indication of when the borders might open, we will start working on that, because the lead time for bookings to travel is quite long. We just feel that it's not appropriate to do that right now. But having said that, we have our plans ready, and we're ready to hit go. So we are, we're in a little bit of busyness in terms of content and PR and training, and then and a lot of planning on the brand and conversion side internationally. Then domestically, we haven't been in the domestic market for a long time. After the bushfires, the minister asked us to temporarily re-enter domestic, and the idea behind that was, during the bushfires, even if you weren't a bushfire affected area, and I'm sure a lot of you had experience of this, international business really did suffer for a period of time, because people had the misperception that all of Australia was burning. And the reason for that was there was just horrendous images being broadcast around the world. We tried to put a number on it in terms of equivalent advertising value, and we think that about $6 billion worth of terrible news stories were going around the world. And so in order to, we were obviously working on that in market, that perception issue, but we entered the domestic space in a bid to try and stimulate a bit of domestic tourism to counter that downturn. So we had our toe in the water. We'd done a great program. Our Tourism NT partners jumped on it straight away and did a Holiday Here This Year campaign, and I still see those buses driving around Sydney, so they're still there, and people are still looking at them and consuming them. But now that COVID-19 has kind of hit, we are going to be in domestic tourism for a longer period of time. It still won't be forever, although there's no certain. The certain thing is there's no certainties these days. But at the moment, the plan is that we will be in domestic tourism for all of financial year 21. So we're planning for a 12-month program at the moment. And the idea around the Live from Oz weekend, which is really that people can't travel right now. And I know that that varies state by state because there is intrastate travel in the NT at the moment, although I know, given population sizes, it's not the same opportunity that it is perhaps in other areas of Australia. But while people can't travel right now, what we want them doing is planning and dreaming for when they can travel. And we think that this is really, really important because a lot of Australians have their set holidays. They sort of go to the same place every year. They tend to be fairly city or beach focused. And what we want them to do is to really understand that there might be areas of Australia that they don't know a lot about. So it's really, for us, it's really about where are the areas around Australia that we're so well known for internationally, and how can we inspire Australians to go and visit those places as well. And there is a big opportunity there because the domestic visitor economy is about 2/3 of the overall visitor economy already. But there are also 6.5 million leisure trips outbound every year to destinations around the world that Australians can't take at the moment. So for those who still have the means to do so, there's a real opportunity to inspire them to take a real experiential and different holiday this year. And that's what we're really focused on. So Live from Oz was the sort of the dreaming part of it and the kickoff part of it. And then as soon as it's appropriate, so when more borders are open, we will go back to holiday here this year, and we will start doing some real conversion work. And we are doing that very much with Tourism Northern Territory. We meet every week. So I catch up with Andrew every week, and then the distribution and the marketing teams also catch up every week because we acknowledge that, this has to be a Team Australia approach to our tourism offering here. So that's what we're doing at the moment. The Live from Oz program this weekend went incredibly well. We kicked off with Love Australia Project, which was a bespoke version of the project on Friday night. And they don't usually do this. They don't usually do bespoke episodes, but they did it with us because they feel like there's it's a real passion project for them. They know that tourism is the lifeblood of so many communities around Australia, and they know that this is that the industry is on its knees, and this is a really great way. Domestic tourism is a great way to get the industry up and running before international borders open. So they were really keen, and hopefully some of that passion did come through. It was the second highest rating channel, that episode that night, and we had about 1.3 million views. So that was a great kickoff to the weekend. Mm-hmm. And then after the weekend, we had 32 bespoke different episodes. And some of those were in the NT. We had Matt Wright, we had Chris Brolga-Barnes doing kangaroo feeding. That was actually the most engaged episode that we did. It was, we had, I'm just looking at my notes here, we had a reach of 5.9 million for that one, and 105,000 engagements. And what we mean by engagements is 105,000 people either commented, liked, or shared that episode. So that went really, really well. And we did a sunset at Uluru, which also reached 4.7 million people. So over the weekend, we reached about 50 million people, and a million of those engaged. So it was a really great kickoff, and it shows that there's still a lot of interest in Australian tourism experiences. So that bodes well. And as soon as we can, we will get going on our Reviving the Holiday Here This Year program. And the idea is really around tugging at Australians' heartstrings and saying, you need a break because you've had a tough time, but you will also be able to help the Australian tourism industry get back on its feet. So, and there is a lot of a lot of goodwill still there from the bushfires, but also now from the COVID-19. There's been a lot of coverage that we are the industry that was hit first, and we're the industry that's going to take the longest to come back. And so I think people know that, and you know, we want to help, but also, you know, we can show them a credible holiday, and maybe this will change the way that Australians travel for a long period of time.
Pip, thank you very much for that. The insights as to what's been happening. I think probably one of the questions before we get onto some more of the details moving forward, Tourism Australia have a great network. You have a great team globally. Some of your team members are in some of the hardest hit spots around the world. How's your team going?
Thank you for asking. That's very kind of you. They're going well. I think, you know, it's a lot of them are still on lockdown. The China team are back in the office, although they were on lockdown for 40 days before any of us had experienced any of that. And a lot of them are in lockdown in places where you need a certificate to get out of the house, you know. So and they're in apartments. They're not in bigger houses like we are. So they've had a pretty tough time. But you know what? It's interesting because they're feeling more engaged with us as an organisation than they ever have, because it's a level playing field. So, you know, we're all just a box on a screen at the moment. So they're feeling quite engaged, and you know that the industry around the world is in a similar boat to us. You know, they're just they're very, very busy, but they're dealing with refunds and angry customers and not getting any income, and so it's pretty harrowing on the other side of this of the distribution chain as well at the moment. So, but they're okay. Thank you for asking. Importantly
so, and I ask that genuinely because I know that so many of our tourism brothers and sisters here in the Territory have very close relationships with your team, as they do with the representatives of Tourism NT and internationally, and certainly our thoughts are with them, because we understand that while life's pretty tough here in the Territory, and it is down in Sydney your way, gee, it must be tough to be in Britain or the UK and understanding, as you said, what happened in China. So good to hear. And could you please pass on the thoughts of all Territorians to them?
Thank you, I will. That's really lovely. Thank you.
Great weekend. Gee, some really big numbers. I can hear a number of our members salivating if they had been able to capture like 0.5% of that in terms of bookings or forward intention bookings. Where does With Love from Oz go from here?
So we are going to continue to roll out the live streaming events, and we want to turn now to the industry. We did feature a lot of industry actually throughout the Love Australia project and over the weekend, but there is an opportunity now for everyone to get involved. And while we can't feature absolutely everybody, what I have said to the team is find opportunities, because this is an industry story to tell. I think, you know, with the you know, the domestic audience, we just want to tell people stories. I think I don't know that the Australian public realise the incredible range of characters and storytellers that we have across our industry, and we think that this is the way to really showcase that is through our social channels. So we have there's a couple of really detailed how-tos and guidelines on australia.com. So I would recommend that people go and have a look at what we're looking for to feature on our channels. But essentially, and I think Sue's our CMO, marketing, not medical, covered this off during a webinar that we did a couple of weeks ago, but it's really just really positive, funny and engaging content. You think about what it is that makes you stop and look at something from all the content that is online, and it is stuff that is, you know, it's feel good, it's telling a story. So, you know, make it personal, talk about, you know, what is it that that people who come and visit you really engage with. It's your characters, and it's the encounters with animals. We feature a lot of animals on our social because it just works. people pick it up and love it. So I would say, you know, feature those really gorgeous animal stories, but also your characters, you know, bring them to life. If you've got somebody in your organization who's a great storyteller and a bit of a character, then put them in front of the camera, because I think that that's what people will pick up and want to hear and see.
And with this audience, I guess there's a fairly big international crowd that are sitting on the couch looking at their devices at this moment in their lives. So I think it's that inspirational story. And what, in terms of targeting audiences, do you have a sense of what the mix is where that's being projected at the moment and people that are following this activity?
Yeah, just on the social before I go on, there's been a tripling of live streaming content consumption at the moment. So it's, you know, there is massive opportunity out there on social. So the Live from Australia went out to 40 plus countries. You know, not all of those we featured. We boosted a lot of them. Big, heavy domestic audience, but it did get picked up globally. And we are currently still boosting it through doing some paid search, and so numbers are still coming in with all of that as well. But in terms of the audiences we're going for, one of the things I did want to say was, with the domestic marketing, we are going for a much broader consumer than we usually go for internationally. So internationally, we're very specific. We go for a high value traveler, and that's not necessarily a high net worth individual. It's actually somebody who spends a lot of their discretionary income on travel and loves everything that we have to offer. There's a whole definition around the high value traveler. But in Australia, we're going for broad mainstream appeal. So when we are able to get going with Holiday here this year, you will see much bigger broadcast and us casting a much wider net.
Yeah, thanks, Pip. Can I seek some advice? Because we have had a few members say to me, and also I've asked this question in terms of Tourism Australia now playing strongly in the domestic market. Tourism NT was our go-to place for our interstate activity. In terms of if I've got a social content idea, if I've got something that I think is pretty cool and I'd like to share and I'd like to see it on the TA platform, what's the best way for me to get that elevated to be considered for a TA platform? And obviously I'm talking about the relationship there with Tourism NT.
Yeah, look, it's still Tourism NT because we work in close partnership with the state and territory organisations because they're just much closer to the product than we are. You can also come through to our social channels. So we've got an email social media at tourism.australia.com, so you can go through to that. But I think, you know, definitely the main conduit is Tourism NT.
Yeah. Pip, Australia has always played well above its weight in terms of international marketing for tourism. Are you seeing in the international sphere any other destinations that are doing similar activities that you would say it's good to keep an eye on this digital age to see what they're doing, to get some ideas and some sense of what they're doing?
Yeah, look, I think everybody's in a fairly similar boat at the moment because there isn't a lot of tourism. Who's doing it well? I think everyone's fairly dormant at the moment. And it's interesting because there is there's been a bit of a sea of sameness in COVID marketing now. I don't know if you've seen it, but you know, everyone's stay safe. You know, we can't see you right now, but until we can, you know, there is a lot. And so we are that's why we're doing things, trying to do things a little bit differently to kind of cut through all of that.
Emails of unprecedented times and we're pivoting.
Unprecedented pivoting times. Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, challenge on that one. Can I, before we move on, I do want to ask you a couple of questions around business events and what your thinking is around the long term of that. But before we do and move away from leisure, Patrick, Central Australia, do you have any questions for Pip on behalf of Central Australia members?
I suppose around the international stuff, I know it's a long time before we're going to have internationals coming in, 12 months of hope, no more than that. But from an events point of view, we've just missed ATE, obviously, and we had Marketplace coming up in the US and stuff like that. Is there any kind of thought process around doing those online? Like I've seen some events happening with some of the states doing international stuff, but is there a bigger push for that? Because even though I think the focus will be domestically for a while, we obviously need to keep front of mind to those people, people we're working with internationally from a ground level. Now is probably the time to start building those relationships and pushing it more while everybody's sitting at home and stuck in COVID time.
Yeah, and I guess the way that we're immediately keeping in touch is through the Aussie Specialist Program, which, by the way, before I move on from that, is going to roll out domestically. So we do have a job to educate agents here on domestic because they're very outbound focused. So we're doing that. So a great way to get involved is to have some offers if you want to get agency business in Australia through the Aussie Specialist. Anyway, on events, yeah, we are. So with our events, we were looking to delay them, and we're still looking to delay them. But there will be a point where we've pushed so many into next year that they're just all bunched up together. So, you know, we're just working through what we do with that at the moment. Virtual options are definitely being considered, and we just didn't think it was right to offer a virtual event right at the moment, just because people were looking at business continuity efforts, not necessarily business development. I think we're at a different point now. So yes, we are looking at some virtual events. We'll be able to roll out quite quickly.
Pip, Tourism Australia through Business Events Australia has been at the forefront of leading our business events activities across Australia, and last year was one of our best years for both Darwin and Alice Springs, and we were set up for a cracking year this year. What's your sense around the business events market, and is there any sort of early research or anything that you're able to share? And if the answer is zero at this point, because we're not hearing from our corporates, I get that as well. Is there sort of a timeline that business events team have and what they're thinking about? What are their markers?
Yeah, the great thing about business events is they're so long term that we are still, there's no doubt we will feel an impact out of this. You know, there will just be less events and people will, you know, and there are some numbers that the industry has put around the impact. But the good news is that a lot of people have just postponed, and we are still getting inquiry for our bid fund. So we launched a bid fund about 18 months ago to support bigger events coming into Australia, and we are getting still getting some requests out of China for 21, 22, 23. So though that activity is still happening. We are also looking at what we do in the domestic space, and we haven't had it signed off by our board, so I probably can't talk about it too much, but we are, you know, as we have done holiday here this year, we are looking at extending the event here this year and trying to get corporates to holiday at home, to actually go an event rather than do it virtually. And I do think that people will still want to meet face to face. I think there's one thing that Zoom has taught us is there is other ways to do business, but actually there's nothing that replaces that face to face. And I think, you know, I think a lot of the problems we're running up against actually at the moment is all the postponed events are taking all of the spots. And so, you know, we're running into availability issues in that space. But there's been an impact in the industry, but longer term, I think it's still in good shape.
Yeah, great. And that's good to hear. And we look forward to any announcements around that, because business events are really important to the folk in the territory, as are our international, of course, our domestic customers. So I think one thing, Pip, that I would like to leave with you is that we really value the support and the quick work that Tourism Australia has done in pivoting in these unprecedented times. But the process that's taken from yourself coming in, it shouldn't be lost on anyone, as Managing Director of Tourism Australia, and bingo, fires, and then COVID-19, and that A, you've had to look after your international teams, B, you've had to realign and I think realign your communications with the SCOs as well, coming in to share that common ground. I saw you on the ABC News. You were being interviewed, and I was interviewing a professor as well that was also presenting and giving their views that tourism in the foreseeable future will be pretty good for those destinations out of 2 to 3 hours drive from the big population centres. And so we've got two challenges. One, we're a long way by road, and two, the airline system isn't working too well in Australia at the moment. So certainly when there are things happening from a Tourism Australia perspective that we would, I'm sure you would, remember the Northern Territory and its unique situation, and also the fact that it possibly it's looking for some of the real help in these markets, because getting people to the Territory will require a lot of work as in the coming months, years. So
I'm very cognizant of that, and look, I think that people staying closer to home is definitely going to be a factor for a period of time. But, you know, people love traveling, and we've done some research in Australia, and 60% of people are busting to do a holiday as soon as the restrictions are lifted. And some of that might be that short, you know, the day trips and the overnights, but people will come back to the longer holidays. And, you know, we're very aware that there's just a lot of need there, particularly for states like yours that just don't have that interstate business to the same extent. So we're on it for you.
Thank you very much, Pip. And with that, we might thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule. It's really meaningful for us in the Territory to be able to spend some time with you, to hear what Tourism Australia is doing. You're doing some terrific things. Thank you very much. Again, regards to everyone in your team, domestically and internationally. And thank you for spending time. And big invitation, as soon as you can, get yourself up here to the Territory.
I want to go to Catherine. Catherine is actually my middle name, and I've always wanted to get up there, and so I haven't been there yet. So that's on my list. It's on my list.
Well, the Swag of our viewers are going to hold you to that. So thank you to everyone. Thanks very much for joining. Thanks, Pip.
And also, I would say that Dom Melling is on this call, I believe, and he is your contact. So I would say, if there's anything you need from us, please reach out. We, you know, we have both of our ears wide open at the moment. There you go. He's waving at the moment. So please reach out to us if you need anything.
Yeah, will do. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. Thanks to Michael Bridge. Thank you to Andrew Hopper. Thanks, Patrick. Is there anything further you'd like to add from down south?
Yeah, no.
Okay. Thank you to Mike Scott. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. We look forward to catching up again shortly. Stay safe. Thank you.